Hey guys, it's Danny. Today we're gonna talk about Phalaenopsis orchids once again. There are two things that I want to address today. First of all, a very weird looking Phalaenopsis orchid that I recently found at a flower shop. And of course I didn't have enough Phalaenopsis, I needed to purchase it, but I do believe it's quite special. I showed this one to you in a post in my community section, but I didn't really want to make a video with it just yet. I wanted to see if all the buds will look this way. This orchid has a little genetic mutation, which is cute in my opinion, and sometimes these mutations are not consistent, let's say. So I wanted to see if the mutation is consistent through all of the flowers, and it is. So I'm gonna show this orchid to you today. We're gonna talk about it. And also, in the second part of the video, I want to address an issue that I have received some comments about. This is the transition of Phalaenopsis from their bark or sphagnum medium, new Phalaenopsis this is, to LECA semi-hydro self-watering in LECA. We'll get to the subject. I want to start a sort of community project, let's say. So stay tuned for that if you're interested, or skip the first part. I do, however, want to start out with the Phalaenopsis. So I'll bring you in closer so you can see what exactly I'm talking about, because I don't think you've ever seen something like this. Alrighty, so here's a close-up of one of the flowers. I think we can clearly see the little mutation here. So this is a white Phalaenopsis, very typical, with the yellow in the lip, but the shape of the flowers is what attracted me to this orchid, what is weird practically. We have really big discrepancies. So I'm going to show you on the screen a typical, let's say, white Phalaenopsis that you might find in flower shops. These are all man-made hybrids, and they are pretty different than the actual species they have in their ancestry. I think you can see some patterns here. People tried to obtain that so-called moth shape. The broad petals, the sepals are not as broad, but still they have a nice even shape. The flower itself in most cases is flat. It doesn't have twisted or weird petals or sepals. While the lip, well, in this case we didn't change all that much, but I feel like the trend is to have broader lips as well, just a little bit. And if we take a look at my little orchid here, we can see that she really does not fit the pattern. And the flower that I'm showing you, I'm just noticing, it looks like it has a thumbs up on one side and a thumbs down on the other. Well, this is not exactly the same with all of the flowers, the actual pattern, but in comparison to the typical Phalaenopsis, we can see that the petals are really not that broad. And also the sepals are slightly twisty. Look at these guys. A typical Phalaenopsis would have the sepals arranged something like this, but my orchid has them in this position, which is weird, but it's cute. Now, let me just show you the other flowers. They do have the same traits. The thumbs up and thumbs down situation is not present on all of the flowers, but I think you can see that all of the petals are thinner than how they should be, and also have a little bit of a fringy aspect to them. They're not all identical, but they do have this weird shape to them. So all of the Phalaenopsis looks a little bit weird, a little bit like how a species would look like. Now, when I first saw it, I thought, oh my goodness, this is a species. And the species that popped into my mind was the Aphrodite and then the Amabilis. But then looking at pictures on the internet, I see it's not really the case. I don't believe this is a pure species. But just as an idea, all the white Phalaenopsis that we find in flower shops, in their parentage, they do have things like the Amabilis, the Aphrodite, and if you're curious and want to see what your orchid has as parentage, I'll link you down below to the Blue Nanta website where you can enter the name of your orchid and you can see the full parentage. So just for the funsies, here is the parentage of the Sogo Euclidean, which I know is a white Phalaenopsis. There might be others as well, but you can see that they do look slightly different than what the species look like. As I was saying, we kind of improved this orchid according to our standards, of course, not the pollinator standards. So that's why I'm saying this orchid is slightly strange, because it really doesn't fit to our preferences. And this trait appears to be pretty even throughout, and I'm guessing it will be permanent as well. There is no flower that actually looks normal, not even the older flowers. So as I was saying, I don't consider that this is a species. I think it's still a hybrid. I just think it has suffered a little anomaly, which turned out great in my opinion. This orchid is not peloric, or I don't consider it to be peloric. And if you don't know what that means, check again the description, I'll link it down below. And oh, the workers have arrived. Hopefully it's not gonna be noisy. Okay, where were we? Peloria. So check down below the description if you want to learn more about the Peloria. In my opinion, this is not a peloric orchid because I don't think we have the petals trying to imitate the lip and vice versa. Typically, that's what Peloria refers to. In this instance, the petals have a shape of their own. I cannot say they are trying to imitate the lip in any way. As you can see, the lip is pretty narrow, and I think in this flower we can see it better. Except the fact that it's pretty narrow, the lip is not all that different from normal Phalaenopsis. So it's just that the petals are in a weird way, and also the sepals are rotated towards the back a little bit. It can also be a new mutation, so I'm pretty surprised they didn't hold on to this individual and try to improve it, because I'm thinking, take a look at these petals. You can actually create wings pretty much. They have these little fringy edges. Maybe fringy is not a good word for it, but I don't have anything better to describe them with. You can imagine that through selection and hybridization, you can select something that actually has zigzaggy edges, if that makes sense. You know how gears have a sort of zigzag finish to the edges? And here we go, my English vocabulary is starting to skip a beat here. I'll just pop up a picture on the screen. Imagine an orchid which has that type of edging but on the petals. I think with something like this, through a lot of hybridization and selection and facilities that can hold thousands and thousands of seedlings, maybe it's possible, I don't know. One thing is for certain, I will try to propagate this orchid, and it's going to be so incredibly interesting to see if the keikis will have the same traits, which I'm sure they will. So in the springtime, you know what we're gonna do with this orchid? We are going to do the keiki paste experiment once again on it. I want to obtain keikis, maybe spread them around and see if they do retain this trait that the flower has, and I'm willing to send it to a true hybridizer as well. But that's for the future. So yeah, that's my idea. Maybe I'm overreacting, but I really like this Phalaenopsis orchid. As for the foliage and everything, it looks like a typical Phalaenopsis. There's nothing to be said, really. It has really broad leaves, really big leaves. The color is not very pale green, indicative of a summer bloomer. It pretty much looks like an Amabilis or a Aphrodite or whatever other orchid from the subgenus Phalaenopsis. So with this said, let me know down below, you guys, if you've ever seen something like this. Maybe it's just a new hybrid, maybe it's not the only one. But yeah, let me know if you've ever seen something like this down below in the comment section. So now returning to the second problem that I wanted to address in this video. Coincidentally, last week I did get 2 comments regarding Phalaenopsis orchids and trying to acclimate them or make them adjust to LECA. Now this issue I kind of talked about, but not with LECA necessarily, but with other media. When I repot orchids from one type of medium to the other, I do try to take extra care of them and make sure that the older roots don't die off due to the fact that they cannot adjust to the new medium. I don't know in what video I talk about it. Maybe this, I'll post something on the screen right now. I'll link you if I find it down below. But referring to LECA, I find that maybe I didn't fully explore the subject. And this is because my personal experience with transitioning new Phalaenopsis to LECA has been going really smooth. I don't know if I have cases of orchids actually not getting adjusted when it comes to Phals. Here are the latest Phalaenopsis that I repotted. I also filmed it, check it down below. Maybe I repotted them a month ago or so, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, but ever since then, I don't actually have issues with them. I didn't lose the older roots, and even though new roots didn't start just yet because they still have blooms, I don't think they will have issues. So at least with Phalaenopsis, I really didn't have issues switching them to LECA, which is great for 99.99% of the population who grows orchids. For me though, as an orchid YouTuber, it's not really that great because I cannot say for certain why some people have issues. So here are the two comments that I got. One of them I replied and I tried to pretty much guess what the problem is, thinking about what I do with my Phalaenopsis. So of course, one thing that you need to do is to remove all of the dead roots, but I do believe my viewers already did that because one of the issues was the formation of molds. So let me show you an orchid that actually has mold and show you exactly why it happens. Okay, here's the Neophoenicia from Jessica. I repotted it in moss. Yes, not in LECA, but mold can actually appear in any type of medium. It's not a LECA thing, particularly because it's inorganic. So take a look here. Do you see this little dot of mold? What is it formed on? A sort of stick. That is a dead root that I missed when I removed all of the dead roots. Or maybe it died in the meantime. All of the other live roots, they have no mold on them. So dead material, whether it is dead roots, dead sheaths, even the base of pseudobulbs and other structures, if they have these dried sheaths, in high humidity, they can produce molds. And this is how it looks like. Solving the issue is easy. Just remove the part that is dead and that's it. You don't need to hassle with hydrogen peroxide. If it's in the pot, some people prefer to use hydrogen peroxide, yes, but I would go ahead and say remove the source, because that's how you're gonna get rid of the problem. Hydrogen peroxide just postpones it a little bit. So I'm of the opinion to just go ahead and remove the source. So that was one of the issues only, but the issues didn't stop there. Some people lost the entire root system of an orchid, case in which I thought, well, okay, maybe the root system wasn't healthy to begin with, but again, I don't really think the people missed that. I think they correctly assessed the root system. And then I thought, okay, maybe it's not adjusting to the properties of LECA. So as I was saying in my response, whenever orchids come from a particular type of setup, I'm trying, at least in the beginning, to copy a little bit that setup. So if orchids come from bark, I typically don't keep them all that soggy, all that wet. The LECA setup, self-watering and semi-hydro both can be very dry setups or very wet setups, depending how you control the water. LECA is not very good at retaining water. It is very comparable to bark actually, and being that it is chunky and has a lot of air pockets, it can be rather airy and dry. So if we don't have a full reservoir of water, whatever this reservoir might be, the LECA obviously stays rather dry, and vice versa. If we have orchids coming from moss and are adjusted to a wetter environment, we can keep the setup a little more moist by never letting the reservoir completely dry out or even completely remain out of water. So this is something that I guessed might be the culprit. The older roots, we all know they have issues adapting to something new. It is the new roots that perfectly adapt to new conditions, but trying to baby a little bit the older roots, at least until new roots are formed, typically works out pretty great for me. So as you could see, I did try to apply what I thought and what I'm doing, and maybe that could help. But there is a very high chance that people already do everything correctly, and the cause might be different than what I think it is. And since I've never experienced it, all I can say is an educated guess, which is good, but it's definitely not as good as experience. So I need your help because I want to start a sort of community project. I have a lot of new Phalaenopsis and I want to try and recreate the issues you guys are having. But to try to recreate them, I need to know exactly what you're doing, what your steps are. So for those of you who have major issues with Phalaenopsis, not other plants, just Phalaenopsis, adapting to LECA in the setup you're using, I want you to describe me in a comment down below what exactly you do. Starting with, do you rinse or not the LECA? Do you spray with hydrogen peroxide or not? Do you cut the roots? Do you do this? Do you do that? How do you remove the moss? How do you remove the LECA? Sorry, the bark, and so on and so forth. Just all of these little details that you're doing, I want to know. Also, afterwards, how do you care for them? One of my viewers said they fertilize, and their scheme was actually pretty heavy. They were using fertilizer, they were using CalMag, things that, in my opinion, are way too heavy for orchids that are just trying to adapt to a setup. So all of these things that you might or might not do, I want to know, because I want to recreate a little bit what you guys do, just so we see exactly what the culprit is. I'm going to try and have at least some of the issues you guys are having just so I can properly see what the issue is and discover the issue together, pretty much solve the problem together. Because yeah, we can all guess stuff, we can all throw a comment or throw a video and say, yeah, it's this. But honestly, without experience, it's just educated guesses, which again are good and they might solve the issue. And with experience, you can have a lot of educated guesses. But nothing beats experience, really. So, if you guys have a little time on your hand, you can drop me a comment down below explaining in detail what you do. I will take, let's say, the most common things that you guys do, as many as possible, and I will try to apply them to different orchids. We're gonna have a control one, doing things how I typically do them in contrast to how some of you guys do them, and we'll see if that makes any difference. We'll see the results that I have. So let me know exactly your conditions, temperature, humidity, all of these things, and how you treat these orchids, how often you water them, how do you know when you should water them, and so on and so forth. All of the new Phalaenopsis that you're trying to transition and you fail. I want to know what exactly you're doing. So I think that's about it for today. The experiment will take a while, so it's not going to be after a month we're going to have answers. So please be patient. When I think I can give you good answers is when I will make the video. I'm not going to rush updates anymore because they're just not helpful. When I see something and I can clearly show you something, that's when I'll do the update. So wish me luck. I hope I get to have issues with my orchids. Whoever said that ever? So alrighty guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know also about that Phalaenopsis. Did you ever seen anything like it? And with that said, I hope you have a great start of the week. You know the drill, like or dislike this video below, subscribe to my channel for regular orchid videos, tutorials, Q&As, and other fun orchid subjects. And if you like YouTube to notify you whenever I upload a new video, just turn on notifications for my channel. Also, if you're interested in my setups and what I use on a regular basis with my orchids, expand the description, I list everything there. And with that said, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye!